With mid-range smartphones becoming more powerful and feature-packed, they're also becoming more and more popular among buyers. While the prices have increased over the years, they're still not as expensive as flagship models, making them great phones to consider, especially if you're someone on a budget. One of those smartphones is the OPPO Reno12 Pro. It has a nice set of cameras, great performance, and a long battery life. However, the price has jumped by a lot from last year's model and it now retails for 34,999 pesos. At that price point, the Reno12 Pro now hits in the same category as a smartphone dubbed as a flagship killer, the realme GT6. The realme GT6 is poised as the brand's flagship killer, priced at also 34,999 pesos with great cameras, a powerful chipset, and more. But how does it stack up against one of the hottest mid-range smartphones on the market right now? Well, I'm Jose from Yugatech, and let's find out in this comparo video. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. Starting off with the design of the phones, they look very different from one another, and you can easily tell them apart. With the Reno12 Pro, OPPO gave the phone a major redesign from its predecessor. Because of the design change, it now looks a bit similar to most of the phones you'd find in the segment. The rear cameras are housed in a rectangular camera island with fluted bezels. The space brown colorway does look great, especially since it has a two-tone design. The upper portion is in matte, while the lower half is, well, at least the lower one-third is in glossy. Meanwhile, there's a small strip that divides the two, which has the OPPO logo. This two-tone design also helps distinguish it from the standard Reno12. As for the realme GT6, it easily stands out among other phones in the price range. You get this really large mirror finish at the upper portion, which doubles as the camera island. It extends the entire width of the phone, allowing users to take Gen Z selfies a lot easier. The only downside is that the mirror portion can get very dirty, and it isn't really the most smudge resistant. As for the rest of the back panel, well, Realme decided to keep it clean on the GT6 with just the Realme logo on the lower left portion. It also has a somewhat matte finish, making it a bit more smudge resistant compared to this upper portion. And of course, this unit is in fluid silver and it looks great, especially with the mirror finish on the camera island. But between the two phones, the Realme GT6 definitely stands out more compared to the Reno12 Pro. Not only does the mirror finish look great, but it looks a bit more visually appealing and it makes the phone unique. In comparison, the Reno12 Pro looks great too, especially with the two-tone design, but with the case on, you might mistake it for another phone. Again, style is subjective after all. Not everyone will appreciate the mirror finish on the Realme GT6, so, some might like a more sedate design. In terms of protection, they're on equal footing with IP65 rating for dust and water resistance. With that, I'd say the design and construction aspect, it's a tie. Style may be subjective. But let's move on to another part of this comparo, the display. On paper, the Realme GT6 seems to have the advantage over the Reno12 Pro. The former features a larger 6.78-inch screen that uses an LTPO OLED panel rated for 1 billion colors, HDR10+, and it even supports Dolby Vision. Since this is an LTPO OLED panel, you get some of the best colors out there. It also has great viewing angles, perfect for when you're watching a video with friends. The display of the GT6 is also very bright, with a peak brightness of up to 6,000 nits. This ensures you will be able to see everything on the screen wherever you go, even if you're under direct sunlight. As for the Reno12 Pro, you also get a beautiful display. But you do get a smaller 6.7-inch screen. It's not an LTPO OLED panel either, it's just a regular AMOLED panel. While it does have HDR10+ colors, there is no support for Dolby Vision. Peak brightness isn't as high either, since the display of the Reno12 Pro is limited to just 1200 nits. That's not to say the screen isn't bright. But of course, having a higher peak brightness really helps, especially when it's sunny outside. So that 6000 nits is a lot. Both phones have a 120Hz refresh rate, giving you smooth animation whether you're watching movies or simply going through the menu and apps. Gamers won't have any complaints either about refresh rate. In terms of protection, both displays are protected by Corning Gorilla Glass Victus 2. As for the speakers, the Reno12 Pro finally gets dual stereo speakers this year, but there is no mention of any tuning. In comparison, the GT6 also comes with dual stereo speakers and there's no mention of tuning either, but it does have the capability to process high-res audio. When it comes to output, the speakers on the Reno12 Pro do seem louder when the volume is maxed out, but the GT6 does have better sound quality, particularly in the mids. So with that, the Realme GT6 takes its first point in this matchup. The cameras on both of these phones are some of the best you can find in the mid-range market. In fact, they nearly have the same specs of camera sensors. Starting with the OPPO Reno12 Pro, you get a triple camera system highlighted by a 50 megapixel main shooter with PDAF and OIS, a 50 megapixel telephoto also with PDAF, and an 8 megapixel ultrawide. This effectively covers you in all bases no matter what subject matter you're shooting. And the results essentially speak for themselves. You get nice sharp images even when you're using the zoom. Up until 3 times zoom, the images have good clarity and the drop off in quality isn't that noticeable until you go beyond 5 times zoom. The colors are quite accurate too, and the phone doesn't overprocess the photos, giving you natural looking images. For selfies, you get a 50 megapixel front camera, which takes great selfie images, and you do look natural in those photos. As for the Realme GT6, you also get a triple rear camera system. This one also uses a 50 megapixel main shooter with PDAF and OIS, a 50 megapixel telephoto, also with PDAF, and again, an 8 megapixel ultrawide. Just check out some of the nice images we were able to capture using this phone, since they did come out sharp and the contrast is nice. When shooting in standard 1x zoom, the images are almost similar. They're both sharp and the quality is amazing out of the box. The big difference though is when you start using the telephoto lens. The images on the Realme GT6 do have better quality, but it does drop off faster in comparison to the Reno12 Pro when you're zooming in. At night, the Reno12 Pro produces better quality images too. The highlights and shadows are a lot more balanced and there's less grain too. And it's probably thanks to its AI camera system, which is, as you can see here, it's ingrained here. For video, the Realme GT6 can record up to 4K at 60 FPS, while the OPPO Reno12 Pro is capped at 4K at 30 FPS. Both phones do have OIS and PDAF to help with shooting. And overall, video quality is almost similar to the images, but the 60 FPS does help, especially for users that want to use it. So although it's a close battle, I will give this round to the OPPO Reno12 Pro. It has better night photography capabilities, giving it an advantage. However, that's not to say the Realme GT6 is bad at shooting in low light conditions. It's also great. It just so happens that the Reno12 Pro outperformed the GT6. So with that, the Reno12 Pro earns its first point in this matchup. In terms of performance, the two phones use processors from different manufacturers. The OPPO Reno12 Pro runs a MediaTek Dimensity 7300 processor, while the Realme GT6 uses the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8S Gen 3 chipset. Our unit of the Reno12 Pro comes with 12GB of RAM and 512GB of storage, but there is a 256GB variant available. Meanwhile, there is only one variant of the GT6 on sale in the Philippines. 12GB of RAM and 256GB of storage. If you find storage lacking, only the Reno12 Pro comes with expandable storage via microSD slot. However, the GT6 does have faster UFS 4.0 storage versus 3.2 on the Reno12 Pro. In terms of real-world use, both phones have great performance for everyday apps. They can also run light games without issues, and even graphic-intensive titles like Genshin Impact on somewhat medium to high settings. However, the benchmark scores tell an entirely different story. The GT6 outperformed the Reno12 Pro in almost all benchmark tests we did. On Antutu alone, the GT6 scored over 1.5 million, while the Reno12 Pro only scored around 650,000. Even on Geekbench 6, the scores are double on the GT6 versus the Reno12 Pro. And you can check out the benchmark scores here for your reference. With that, the Realme GT6 earns its second point in this matchup. Both the Realme GT6 and the OPPO Reno12 Pro run on Android 14. The GT6 is skinned with Realme UI 5.0, while the Reno12 Pro has ColorOS 14. Both phones have their own quirks and both even have their own AI optimized features. Interestingly though, the GT6 does have more AI functions to work with. The GT6 also comes with a lot less bloatware in comparison to the Reno12 Pro, which has a lot. But overall, both of these phones do have a nice interface to work with once you get rid of the bloatware, and you can easily pick up on its features once you play around with them. For connectivity, both phones have all the essentials: 5G, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, GPS, and NFC. However, only the Realme GT6 comes with support for Wi-Fi 7, and it even has an infrared blaster as compared to the Wi-Fi 6 on the Reno12 Pro and no infrared blaster. As for the battery, the GT6 has the bigger battery capacity at 5,500 mAh using a dual cell battery system. In comparison, the Reno12 Pro has a standard 5,000 mAh battery pack, which is common on most smartphones today. Despite the difference being only 500 mAh, the GT6 did last a lot longer in our battery benchmarks. It managed to score 17 hours and 16 minutes on the PC Mark battery test versus the 15 hours and 34 minutes of the Reno12 Pro. For reference, both tests were done on 50% brightness, airplane mode, and 0 volume. In addition to having a longer battery life, the GT6 also has faster charging speeds at 120 watts versus the 80 watts of the Reno12 Pro. With that, the GT6 takes another point in this comparison. As I mentioned earlier, both phones retail at 34,999 pesos. But there is a serious difference in terms of performance between the OPPO Reno12 Pro and the realme GT6. Granted, the Reno12 Pro does have better cameras, but the GT6 does everything a lot better as a whole. I mean, it is touted as a flagship killer after all. Still, that's not to say that the Reno12 Pro is a bad phone. If you're someone who loves photography over gaming and everything else, then the Reno12 Pro is still a solid choice with its nice set of cameras. But for our comparo, we'd pick the realme GT6. What do you think? If you had the budget, would you choose the realme GT6 or the OPPO Reno12 Pro? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video or found it informative, of course, please do drop a like and subscribe to our channel to watch more. Also, don't forget to follow us on our social media platforms, which is Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok. And of course, visit yugatech.com to stay updated with the latest tech news and reviews. And also, to check out the individual reviews we've done on both of these phones. So, with this has been said, and I'll catch you guys next time.